for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so tell me your full name. It's Justin Guy, right?
Correct. Justin Guy.
Justin Guy. How old are you, Justin?
I'm 43.
43.
Yes.
What's been the highlight of your 43 years?
My salvation. I started, Baptist church, grew up in a Baptist church. And like a lot of folks, it was November 14th, 93. I was 11, somewhere in that range. And end of a service, went up and gave my heart to the Lord. And I like to say that, a lot of folks can backslide sometimes, and I'm just like everybody else, and I have. But for the last several years, I've been serving the Lord, and that has been the highlight of my life. I mean, my salvation and serving the Lord.
Okay, so that's where we're headed. That's where we're headed with the conversation. This is about just finding out people's journey to the cross. Right now, you are married?
Correct.
Okay, because I don't really know. We've had a few conversations.
Yeah.
I know you lead the men's group and such, but we haven't. This is probably the longest we've talked to each other since we've met.
Probably so.
Yeah, so I don't know much about you, and I'm curious. And I know a lot of people are going to be curious too. So you're married. Do you have children?
Yes, happily married.
Okay.
8, fixing to be 9 years.
9 years?
Yes. Have 5 children. It's what you call a blended family.
Okay.
So, and I've had friends who aggravate me and say, you've had kids every way there is to have kids. And we don't use the word step in our family. We call them bonus parents.
Bonus?
Yes,
okay.
because they're mine, whether biologically or not, they're mine. So,
right.
Yes. But 5 wonderful kids, 3 of which are adults. All my boys are over 18 now, and I've still got 2 girls at home. So
3 boys,
2 girls.
2 girls.
Mm-hmm.
I have 5 kids, but 4 girls, 1 boy.
Wow.
So yeah, well, that my son and I would have quality father-son time and run away sometimes and do guy stuff. But all right, so you correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
You're a native Tennessean?
Yes.
All right, so. You're kind of a unicorn anymore around here.
Yeah, especially at our church. Born and raised East Tennessee. My family's from Greene County. I was actually born in Knoxville. Go Vols. Hey, my blood runs orange when it comes to that. College football, it's the South.
I was going to ask you to kind of wear your orange overalls.
I thought about it.
Did you?
On a future visit, maybe. On a future visit.
Yeah.
Born in Knoxville. Lived here since I was 3. Like I said, my family's from here. Love East Tennessee, and now everyone else does too. And they're all here. All here. But you know what? All these folks that I've met are all wonderful people, and they're here for all the right reasons, and we're glad to have them. So glad y'all are here.
Oh, well, thank you. Because, I, with my wife, moved down from Washington State, and it's a good place to move from if you're, concerned about the political climate and such. So I found down here that, I don't know, I feel like these are my people, and I guess in a sense they could be because, my grandma was born in Jefferson City. She grew up here.
Pretty close. Yeah, Jefferson City.
Yeah. So Knoxville. So how did your family's still in Knoxville then? Or?
No. My parents had moved to Knoxville a brief stint during the 80s. I'll date myself. It was the World's Fair, that time frame in Knoxville. If folks don't know, the Sun Sphere, which is kind of known in Knoxville, it was built for the 81 World's Fair. And I was a baby during that time frame, and they lived in Knoxville, lived in the big city for a while before they moved back to the family farm. And that's where my mother still lived until recently, was the family farm.
Well, that's something we both have in common. And the 1962 World's Fair in Seattle.
You're dating yourself a little more than I dated myself.
When they built the Space Needle, was my birth year. So
hey, there you go.
Yeah.
A little something in common with the World's Fair.
A little bit. Yeah. So, how did you get up this part of Greene County?
Like I said, my family farm. My grandparents lived in Greene County, had a family farm. So,
right.
Yeah.
What kind of farm?
So, if folks don't know, the number 1 cash crop in Tennessee, legal cash crop, we'll say, was tobacco for many, many years. It was government subsidized, and everyone worked a factory job and had a couple acres of tobacco.
Right.
on the side, and that's what you did, and some beef cattle, that kind of thing. And the minute the government subsidies went away, tobacco disappeared, and it was no longer a crop because there was no money in it without those. And so it kind of went away, did away with a lot of the farms here in Greene County. So,
well, was it still at the tobacco farm when you were involved?
Yeah,
with it?
yeah. I tell people I have learned so many skill sets that are totally useless now. I had 5 uncles who all had farms.
Okay.
And I helped them grow, cut, and prepare for the market and everything, tobacco. And I had to help all of them because that was family for free. That was family.
Right.
And then if I wanted to make money, I had to help the neighbors. So yeah, I worked a lot of tobacco growing up, and that was primary. We had beef cattle as well, but the primary income on the side and everybody had a day job because you couldn't make it just farming. Even by the 80s and 90s, you couldn't make it by just farming. You had to have a job, and then you farmed on the side because it's what you grew up with, what you loved. That kind of thing. So, but it went away. It went away in the mid-late 90s. And, it's not, some of those folks have switched over to the hemp stuff these days, but it's not catching on like they thought it would.
So did you approach it in the biblical sense? Because even in Scripture, it talks about the farmer is supposed to be the first to partake of the crop.
So to answer your question, I don't smoke.
Okay, no, I
never did. No, we use that biblically speaking for our gardens. A lot of times, the garden, if you had tomatoes and onions and lettuce and all the things you grew in the garden,
right,
you take a basket of stuff to the pastor at church, and or share it at the church or wherever the case may be. But you give that first yield back to the Lord. Yeah.
Okay, so are you living on the farm property now? Is that
no?
Okay.
I actually live in the city of Greenville now. Yeah.
Oh, you're city folk.
I currently am city folk. Yes.
Which doesn't mean much. I mean, you sneeze and you're outside the city limits. So,
yeah.
All right.
It's a funny thing about the farm, for 18, 20 years, I couldn't wait to get off of it. I'd worked, my entire childhood and couldn't wait to get to town. And you get to town and I miss the farm. It's funny how that works. I love to garden. I live in town, but I have an acre and we do a big garden every year. And I love to get my hands dirty. It's just something about putting your hands in the dirt that you miss. Something about getting back in touch with, God's creation.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up around Puget Sound up in, saltwater. That's, and even now when I go visit an ocean and that smell of salt water, some might think, ooh, that kind of smells like seaweed or dead fish or whatever. But it's like, oh, it reminds me of home. Just the sight and smell of salt water.
Yeah, I can smell tobacco if somebody has got some that they've purchased and rolled their own cigarettes or whatever. If I come into a place and it takes me back to the tobacco barn every time when you smell it, to my childhood.
Do you like the smell of tobacco?
Yes, love it. Don't smoke, never smoked, but I love the smell of tobacco. Yeah.
It's interesting. My dad was a smoker growing up, and
I don't like the smell of cigarette smoke, but tobacco.
Okay, no, just listen. My dad was a smoker. And I'm not condoning. I wouldn't condone smoking or chewing or anything. I'm not condoning the use of tobacco products in that context. But I was living in New Zealand and quite homesick. My wife and 5 kids were there with me and stuff. And I remember being homesick. And then we were in a church that had. Well, they had, it was more of there was a shop next door to it. And so the workers of the shop, they would come out on their smoke break. And I remember the sanctuary door being open one time and the smell of smoke came in there and I was homesick. The pastor, he had a bad experience with, anytime he smelled smoke, it was about just that his folks weren't the best and they were smokers and drinkers and the whole thing. And so his experience was different than mine. Because when I smelled the smoke, I remember I had a dad who was home, hard worker, and he loved me. And it was just a curious thing that even when you're talking about tobacco, you can have good memories of it, and somebody else who might have been in a situation not as pleasant as yours would have bad memories of it. So,
one of the ways wisdom has been passed down in the Appalachian region, especially, is storytelling and word of mouth. And you'd be amazed the amount of storytelling that happens when you're grading tobacco in the tobacco barn, for example, or out in the fields, and there's a couple of you working as a team, and you're swapping stories and telling things. You'd be amazed the storytelling that happens.
Yeah.
And it's, that's kind of what's missing from modern life these days is the storytelling.
Well, I think and you're in charge of the men's ministry here at the church, and my personal experience, I'm a blue collar kind of guy. I like to build things, and work parties for me were some of the highlights of fellowship, because you were with other guys and you're working hard, and you enjoyed the food more and you enjoyed the fellowship more because you had shared a common a burden or task or goal or vision or whatever it is. So even, we were talking a little bit earlier about the upcoming men's conference, to hit the road with a whole bunch of other guys just to be guys.
Yeah.
We may not be saints on the road, but we are saved and we love one another. And
the beautiful part of that, I mean, obviously the conference is the goal and you want to further your relationship with the Lord, but that road trip experience, you've got guys who are further along in that walk with the Lord, and you've got guys who aren't as far along. And last year I watched friendships be made, friendships strengthened, folks young in their walk, grow in their walk. And it's just a good combination to have for guys, and to be in a good environment and have a road trip like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of my fondest memories are of retreats or pastors' conferences or family conferences. Just getting away and experiencing life outside of our little bubble, and to find out that there's more people that are just like you, and you get that chance to experience it in a bigger way with more people.
Yeah. And we all focus on our faults and the way we fall short with the Lord. But we find out through being together in those interactions that, hey, nobody's perfect. And this is how that person grew in their walk, and this is what they did. And you share those experiences, and it's a faith-building, relationship and friendship growing experience.
Yeah.
So it's good.
It's like camping. Now, do you like to camp?
Yes. Now, when I was younger, I liked to, tent camp and do a little more of that style camping. As I've gotten older, my back, which maybe we'll get into that today, maybe we won't, doesn't allow me to tent camp and do that kind of thing like I used to. I got into teardrop campers for a little while. I've had a couple different
those
teardrops.
Little ones? Yeah. I like those.
I do. I had a homemade teardrop that I had bought and refurbished, and then I had a square drop, what they call a square drop, which is a manufactured version, a little boxier, and my son currently has it. That I took to places, and we took them on a homeschool co-op trip. The seniors take a trip in the year. We went to Charleston, and the pastor took his camper, and we took our camper, and it was amazing. So did some camping on the trip.
The teardrop is about the shape, not about your wife crying that you're spending so much money on it. Okay, just checking.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I love to camp. In fact, all of our children, by the time they were 3 months old, they'd slept outside in the woods without a tent. Because my wife,
something beautiful about sleeping under the stars. It's just amazing.
Yeah. But my wife grew up in a very rural, North Cascades and up in Washington, and so I like camping. In fact, I like the smell of campfires. And I've just been thrilled this year because I finally put in wood heat into my own house, and get to build fires. And it's like, this is good heat. This is good heat.
We talk about the men's group. I tell the guys that when you're going to get guys together, there's only like 2 or 3 different ways. It has to involve fire, food, or firearms. It's one of those 3 things generally, and you can draw men together and have good conversation.
Yeah, because there's a common enjoyment. So go ahead, and since you touched base on it, and we were a little bit, we touched on our injuries when we were talking in passing and stuff. What about your back? What's going on with your back?
Sheree and I it's my wife, Sheree, had gotten back where we need to be with the Lord several years ago. When we first got together, we both knew we were Christians. We both agreed on the core principles of Christianity. But we weren't going to church. We weren't walking with the Lord like we should be, and we both realized it. Through some trials, we got back into church. We stopped doing some of the bad habits we had. When you get back to where you need to be, sometimes you have to give up some things that aren't what the Lord would have us do.
Right.
And while we were doing all that, started having more and more back pain, back troubles. And as the guy grows, gets older, you realize I've worked hard during my life, and it's just normal, right? And of course, as guys, we procrastinate. And so I, procrastinated about, just my back hurts. It's what happens as you get older. But it finally got to the point to where I couldn't walk. I was limping across the floor. I was in horrendous pain. Couldn't sleep at night. Couldn't lay flat. I would get to where I was completely exhausted before I could finally lay down. And then when I finally started seeking some help is when I would wake up after a couple hours of sleep. I literally couldn't walk. Could not walk. Couldn't get out of the bed.
Wow.
So I started going to the doctors and trying to figure out what's going on. It's an autoimmune disease, ankylosing spondylitis. That's what the world calls it.
Autoimmune disease?
It's an autoimmune disease. It's my immune system working against itself.
Oh.
They say that your spine will fuse starting at the bottom. Your joints and things will hurt. It's kind of akin to rheumatoid arthritis.
Okay.
That's what the world says. My wife, her faith, she was a little bit further in her walk than I was as a man. We'll put it that way. And early on, she would pray for him, which we would pray together at night. A lot of times we study and pray in the mornings.
Right.
At the time, she would have to pray me to sleep, and she'll tell you there's many nights she had to pray me to sleep.
Really?
Yeah. And at the time, I associated with her. I'm like, wow, she has an amazing gift. She can heal my back just long enough for me to get. She would literally, the pain would go away. She would pray. She would lay hands, and the pain would stop, and I can go to sleep. And it was the most amazing thing. And at first, I kind of credited her for having that gift. And then as I grew in my walk, I realized, healing's for today. Okay, it's our faith that provides that healing. I mean, the Lord provides it, and we believe.
Right.
And so I furthered my walk, and this disease, if you talk to folks who have it, becomes quite disabling and is very degenerative. But I'm here to tell you, through prayer and just the Lord healed me. Now my back still hurts, but I'm sure the average guy's back still hurts. But I don't have mornings where I can't get up and walk. I don't have mornings where, that I'm in horrendous pain. I can generally lay down and go to sleep most nights. On a scale of 1 to 10. Pardon. It's emotional. When you develop that faith, it's really moving. But it's almost unexplainable at times. The amount of love and just compassion our Lord has for us, and how He'll heal us, and all we have to do is ask, and
right.
And He's our provider. But yeah, I mean, now occasionally you'll see me lean because my back will hurt from standing still. But when I'm in motion, I feel better. I feel better in the middle of the day when I'm moving. The longer I sit, or the more I stand still, it still hurts. But it's nothing like it was. And I don't pretend to understand how the Lord works or how His healing works.
Right.
But He does it in His time and His way. And I'm here to tell you, I'm thankful. I'm so thankful that I have this degenerative disease, the world says, and I feel great. I feel wonderful. And it's just an amazing thing. And I've had people who I've talked to who I've come across who have it, and they'll ask me all kind of questions because it's kind of unusual. You don't hear of it much.
Right.
And they'll ask me all kind of questions. I'm like, pray. Just pray. Just talk to the Lord about it. Give it to Him. And it's amazing. It's amazing. But that's my testimony on healing is just, and we have healing services here at the church sometimes, and I'll give that testimony occasionally as we pray for folks and stuff. But no matter what the need is, whether it's physical, spiritual, emotional, financial, the Lord hears those prayers and He cares.
Yeah.
So
just to touch base on the autoimmune thing, did that occur or start to become an issue for you about the same time you were taking a different direction towards the Lord?
It did.
Do you ever relate those two together? Do you?
The thought crossed my mind. I really don't know. Most folks who are diagnosed with this get diagnosed at an early age, just out of their teenage years, 19, 20. Mine was my mid-30s. They diagnose it based on a biological gene you have, and then your symptoms, of course, and that kind of thing.
Right.
The thought crossed my mind, and lots of different thoughts cross your mind.
Sure.
What's the reason for this happening to me?
Yeah.
Why is this my experience in life?
Right.
And you don't know. But in the end, it is what I, deal with, and I give it to the Lord, and I just choose to believe that way. My wife has rebuked it many, many times.
Oh, I can imagine.
And I don't want to accept it, but at the same time, I want to be realistic. And I know the Lord's got me no matter what the deal is, whether, it's an autoimmune disease or anything else. So
I found that oftentimes when we pray for something specifically, more often than not, we get just the opposite answer. Now, just bear with me on this.
Okay.
It's not that God's not going to answer. If we pray for a loved one or pray for a situation, all of a sudden they're not doing as well, the loved one, and it's, oh Lord, I've been praying about this. I believe that there is what I look at as there's the birth of the vision, then there's the death of the vision. Then in God's time and only by his power, it's resurrected. And you'll see that throughout all of Scripture, that there's the birth of the vision, there's the death of it, and there's the resurrection. Mm-hmm. Because in that process, we come to recognize it's not our strength, it's not our power, it's not our determination. Okay, God told me I'm going to do this, and we're going out to it, we're just going to complete this, and it falls on its face. And since you're down there, might as well pray, God, just when we raise the white surrender flag and say, okay, I must have heard you wrong, Lord, or whatever, and I give up, and you say, okay, the Lord's almost speaks to your heart that, okay, now it's time. Now that you've surrendered everything and you're not trying to fix it, now that you're not trying to fix it, I'll show you what I can do. It doesn't mean there's not, instantaneous, miraculous healing right on the spot. But more often than not, there's this process of you get a word from the Lord, and somehow it dies, and then he resurrects it in his time. I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it.
No, I agree. I think the Lord will never force you to do anything. It's you have to choose to walk with him.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of times folks have to get broken down and become a certain state or place in their life before the Lord's ready to build them back up. Okay, now you're ready to walk with me. I see that, and let's build from here. Well, and I think that happens sometimes.
It reminds me of when he was healing the blind man. That one thing where he wasn't quite able to see. It was a little blurry. He said he saw men walking like trees, and then the Lord touched him again, or I don't know if he spit on him. It sounds funny when you think about the Lord spitting and making clay, but in that culture, that was part of the thing. But it's almost like you see that particular man in process. He had enough faith, and it was a little blurry, and now faith was ignited, and he was completely healed. I don't know, but sometimes it's that process that we're talking about.
The other thing I've noticed is I have just seen how the Lord's plan has been woven together like a tapestry through my life. There have been so many things. We were talking beforehand off camera about different things, and I told you that I feel like I've learned skill sets,
right,
only for them not to be used. Tobacco being one of them. I worked in tobacco growing up, and then now it's not grown here. I also was in the medical field for a while. I've been in manufacturing. I'm kind of a jack of all trades in that way. But I got into the medical field. Started as a CNA.
CNA, what's that?
Certified nursing assistant.
Okay.
It's you're the grunt, so to speak, in the unit or wherever you're at. You're making beds and changing diapers and helping out and running to and fro and feeding and those kind of things. It's where you get started in nursing. And I loved it. Had a wonderful job at Tacoma Hospital, and was looking into getting into nursing school. Well, all this during this time, my mother-in-law had moved in with us. She was disabled, and we made the joke that that's how funny that your daughter married a fellow who's a CNA, but just like with how I don't use that tobacco skill set anymore, there was a merger between the local hospital systems here. That hospital was bound to close. We knew it was, and it did. Mm-hmm. COVID hit,
right,
and all these things did away with that job. And I asked myself at the time, Lord, why do you have me learn these skills and go this direction in life? I know, and I've got multiple stories of how I even got to be a CNA. It was the Lord, to have that door shut. But as they say, every time he's shut a door, he's either opened a door or opened a window for me. And so you move on to the next. But I don't believe in coincidences. There's too many things that have happened in my life in a particular order that wouldn't have worked out any other way for it to be coincidence. It's the Lord's plan. It has to be.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
The Lord has, but that phrase you use, I'm not sure where people get that if it closes the door, that he opens another one, or he opens a window.
Well, it's from our perspective.
From our perspective,
Not from his, from our perspective.
Yeah, but maybe sometimes he closes it and tell you, just wait.
Oh yeah, sometimes you just got to be still. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
But I'll break and tell this quick story. Like I said, we could talk forever, and I could tell a million stories of how I became a CNA. I'd had rotator cuff surgery on both shoulders within the same year in manufacturing, and I had decided to move to something a little different. I knew that my mother-in-law's health was not well, and we may end up helping her. And so I had actually already applied online for CNA school. The local medical facility here had been hiring CNAs, and they were offering the course for free. Usually you had to pay for this course. Well, they were offering it free because they were in such desperate need of CNAs. Oh, wow. So I walk into the local hospital to pay a bill.
Right.
There's a nurse out front behind a table. She said, "Excuse me, sir, do you need a job?" I said,
"Just like that?"
Yeah. It was a hiring event.
Okay.
I said, "Matter of fact, I do." She said, "Have you ever considered being a CNA or anything like that?" I said, "Matter of fact, I've already got an application in online. I've signed up for this June. I'm going to take a CNA class through the company." She said, "Oh, no. She said, we've got an even better thing going on. We're so desperate in Greenville for CNAs right now that we will hire you, pay you while you're going through the CNA course.
That's the way.
And you will be working on the unit you'll be in when you're not in class."
Wow.
And so you're already getting paid. You have the job laid out. You already know the job by the time you graduate from the class. It was perfect. So she said, "Just follow me." And I go back to a room full of more nurses behind tables. And this one nurse looks at me. This is the only job I've ever been hired on based on my looks. She waves me over. Come here. And she looks at me. She says, Do you mind working with elderly folks?" And I said, "No, I actually have a mother-in-law and mother who are disabled who I care for." She said, Good. Can you work night shift?" I said, "Yeah, matter of fact, because I'm a caregiver, I would need to work night shift." She said, "Perfect. You're hired. Go fill out the application over here." What it was is there was a Jerry Psych unit, that they needed help with. A lot of times these folks, don't know what's going on.
Right.
They're not in touch with stuff. And these nurses have a tough time with them. They were hiring. The other guy they hired looked just like me. 6 foot tall, 300-pound local boy, just like myself, and corn fed. And they needed big guys basically to be CNAs. Is what they needed. So I tell people I got hired for my looks, but all that was just a God thing, So I thought I'd do my plan and put in online for a free class. And he said, "No, here, let me provide for you." And he got me in a better situation than I already planned on being in. So it's stuff like that all through my life.
Yeah.
So it's just too big to be a coincidence.
Wow. So. Yeah, you've got stories all over the place. That's what I find that's fascinating to me, that people have stories and you can just
We'll have to make this a series.
Well, that would be fun. That would be fun. One last thing. So here at the church, we're in the post office, as I'm calling it, and this is Crossroads Cowboy Church in Greenville.
Correct.
I'm learning how to say it.
Crossroads Cowboy Church, Greenville, Tennessee.
Greenville.
Yeah, if you're local, it's Greenville. It's Vulle instead of Ville. Vol. Greenville.
Is that like the Vols or
no, it's just and Bayleton is Bayleton.
Bayleton.
Yeah, and it's not Elizabethtown. It's Elizabethton.
Elizabethton. I got that one down.
Okay.
That was but the other ones I go, oh yeah, I got to say it.
Morristown is Marshtown.
Marshtown
you'll find locally. And nobody can pronounce Malsheim correct. Looking at it in word form, nobody can say Malsheim correctly because it looks.
Oh, like Moshheim.
Yeah, it looks. Yeah, it's spelled correctly. I mean,
once I hear something the way it's supposed to, then I get kind of nitpicking. Try to say it that way. So,
the one that the pastor's wife and I have debated in fun lately is Appalachia. So I'm from here, and we all call it Appalachia. Now, if you watch TV or folks who aren't from here, they say it all different kind of ways. Appalachia. There's all kind of different pronunciations. And and the pastor's wife, where she's from, the northern part of the Appalachian Mountains, they say they don't say Appalachia, it's Appalachia. And so we've debated because she says her way is correct and I say my way is correct, and we're both correct. It depends on where you're from in Appalachia on exactly how you say it.
Yeah.
So.
from the northwest part of the country, Appalachian is what I was familiar with.
Yeah, just where you're from dictates, how you pronounce it.
I think that's how I've been here so long I can't remember. Okay? Anyway, well, thank you so much for sharing. And it's encouraging to know that God has a plan for each one of us. He has a way of weaving the tapestry, like you said. And sometimes, from his point of view, he's weaving it, but our view is from underneath, and it looks like a mess of yarn and knots and everything. And he invites us up, and we can see what that whole weaving of life he's doing for us. And it's a beautiful thing. So anyway.
Well, thank you for having me, and I look forward to coming back sometime.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you for watching. Join us next time. You can subscribe to the channel if you like, and we're going to try to do a few more of these testimonies, the trail to the cross. It's a good thing. It's been encouraging, even for me when I go back and edit some of these things. I find that I go, wow, that's good. So it's good stuff, as our pastor would say. Thanks for watching.